You're listening to the Two Sleuth Podcast, all about the business of dentistry, hosted by yours truly, Greg Essenmacher, a fixable arch dental expert and founder of G&A Consult, speaking with industry leaders on the dental landscape from their perspective. Welcome back, everyone. Greg Essenmacher here. But come on, guys. By now, if you don't know me, you're just starting to listen and we're over 100 episodes in. All right, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to cajole you. I'm not going to be mean to you just to start out the episode. But I really am pleased to welcome on a friend of mine and someone who has a wealth of knowledge, Daniel Masuda Lehrman. And Daniel and I go a ways back, and the great part is that, yes, he's a Michigan man. And so if you listened last week, I had a Michigan man on. It's not a theme intentionally, just the way that the calendar landed. But Daniel is a fee-only fiduciary and founder of Masuda Lehrman Wealth. And what that means is he's going to talk to us about money and not just transactional stuff, but we're talking about building generational wealth and how to actually build wealth for dentists and people in the dental industry, both in and outside of dental. And so I'm super excited to have him on the show. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Greg. Super grateful and honored to be here talking to you.
Good. And, no pressure, but you better step up because I know that you also do stuff on YouTube. And so people look for you. They're going to be like, really? He was dead fish on your show? No, I'm just kidding. And funny that I talk about fish. Wait, because you actually live in Hawaii. How long have you lived in Hawaii? You moved there fairly recently?
Fairly recent, 2 years ago. Yep.
Okay.
It's been, like it's longer in a way, but yeah.
Well, just because a gallon of milk costs twice as much, right? Over there that it does in the lower 40s. That's a whole nother story for another day. Because I know you love surfing and I know you love the tropics. And so, we don't have pity for you with the life that you're living over there. So don't even trust that.
I'm not going to let you get away with it. Yeah.
There you go.
I don't complain too much. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, I really want to start with a couple of things because, when you talk about like fiduciaries and financial planners and people who help with money, I don't want people instantly to turn off the dial, right? So let's peel back instantly. And it's like, what do you see as maybe the one or two things that individuals, whether they're dentists or in the dental profession, that they could take a look at today and do that really could start to be life-changing for them, whether it's short or even better long-term for their financial health?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think that one of the biggest things I see among dentists, doctors, those that kind of go through a long period of schooling and then suddenly get out of school and have a super high income is that the biggest risk is lifestyle inflation, which I'll explain. Basically, financial sense isn't taught in medical school. So when a lot of doctors exit medical school and complete the residency and start to see their incomes inflate, they find out way too late that they can't sustain that lifestyle because they've allowed their lifestyle to go up with their income. And so they end up becoming a slave to their practice or to their profession. And so one thing that I often help my clients with who are in that position is obviously saving and investing, but planning for how they can sell their practice and transition to relying on portfolio income, and having options, I think is the important thing, right? Like even if you love what you do, you still want to be able to do something else if your priorities shift, as things often do in life. So yeah, I think that's definitely the number one thing that applies to your audience for sure.
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind too. So, a good friend of mine, Laura Brenner with Lola Bees talks about dentist side gigs, and some may actually transition out of the clinical, right? So, or they'll sell to a DSO with all the mergers and acquisitions happening, and so they'll build up their practices, they'll sell it, and then it's a what next? So that certainly can happen. But I want to go back and double click on the lifestyle inflation that you talk about, because certainly for even someone like me who comes up through the manufacturing side, I've been in dental for 18 years, as let's just take something very simple, going from driving a Nissan Rogue to now driving an Audi Q7, right? If you just look at that as a microcosm of the bigger picture, right? That alone, it's not just, oh, well, your car payment went up. Well, it's also your insurance goes up and the amount of gas you consume goes up and all the ancillary things. And what is it to maintain that car? And what is it? I
Right.
mean, you could go on and on and on just with that one line item. Well, it's actually a line item and a sub line item because it's, maintenance and insurance and all the things
Right.
associated with a vehicle. I mean, that is really what you're talking about in essence. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just, and it's a balancing act. Like, you should always, it's hard to take one extreme. Like one extreme would be, don't spend any money on anything you don't need. But that's not a fun way to live. We all need to have some balance and to be able to reward ourselves for whatever it is, an increase in pay, a promotion, whatever it is. But prioritizing the right things first, which is, I would say, start with retirement, start by paying yourself first. A lot of people have that priority wrong. Well, they'll buy the car first and then realize at the end of the month, oh, I don't have any money left to save and invest. And that's what gets people in trouble, is that continuous cycle of that happening, rather than automating. I'm going to save X percent of my money per month. As soon as it hits my bank account, I'm just going to put it over here, have it invested, have it saved, whatever. And then have some guilt-free spending after that. So
And so we have the clinicians, right? That's one pool of my listening audience, and those are the ones that have gone to dental school, and they're on a different trajectory. Hopefully, they paid off their student loans, and maybe even bought practices, starting to build and grow their practice, and that maybe even potentially generational wealth. And then a whole nother listening audience of mine, manufacturing, right? Industry reps and those. And if
mm,
they didn't have the parents or the education or the knowledge to really start that early, right? Which is set aside a percentage of whatever you're earning into a retirement account at 18, 20, 25 years old, early on. They don't have that muscle, worked out to where it's strong. And so
right.
no matter where they're at, 25, 30, and they start to get into, middle management or, other levels of their career, and they're starting to make some money. How do they start where they're at, where it's not going to be something where it is a situation you're talking about? Now they're getting into the nicer vehicles because they certainly can't, they can't be rolling up, I don't even know. I was going to say like a Yugo. That was like such a reference to the 80s, which is so wrong and ages me. Right. But it's difficult for them to roll up in a jalopy if they're going to be rolling
Right.
up into these really nice practices and, you know,
Mhm.
that they're representing, right? They have to have a certain level of lifestyle, uh,
Right.
things that they're representing. So talk to me a little bit about
Absolutely.
that and my listening audience of how do they start to transition to doing something, going from nothing to where they can and should be in order to help themselves up well.
Yeah. And that's a great question, because it doesn't matter if it's a super high earning dentist who has their own practice, who might be in their 50s and is behind on retirement. It might be the same situation for a 30-year-old who maybe isn't a dentist but is still hasn't started saving for retirement. It's the same problem. Like, you're not on track to retire when you potentially want to, or when you would imagine that you would. 62, 65, 67, whenever that is. Um, and there's generally going to be only three major things you can do, right? And it boils down to, can you increase your income more than it is right now? Can you decrease your spending? And that can be broken down between essential and discretionary spending. Essential is the stuff that you need to pay for, your mortgage, your utilities, your groceries, and then discretionary might be travel or dining out or gifting or entertainment. And so those are not easy things to do. That's why it's a difficult conversation. Is It's not easy to tighten the belt. It's very easy to say, just increase your income, no big deal, right? We're not all Greg Estenmacher, and we can't just, be starting amazing businesses left and right? So it's easy to say, but it's hard to do. And then the third aspect, which is, unfortunately, the more realistic possibility for a lot of folks, which is to just delay retirement. And so again, I'll use the example of a 50-year-old dentist who maybe makes a few six figures, has their own practice, but hasn't really done enough to save for retirement, and maybe has let their lifestyle creep up where they're spending a majority or a big chunk of what they earn. It's the same situation for someone that's 35 and maybe has less income and less spending. They're just off track, and they need to find a way to bridge that gap so they have enough wealth to be able to retire if they wanted to. And again, even if you love what you do, you don't want to rely on that and say, I love what I do, so I'm gonna do it until I'm 70. I think financial independence doesn't mean retiring. It means having enough money so you could retire.
Yeah, and it's having choice. And I appreciate that you pointed that out. And as you were sharing that, it so reminded me of what we do at GNA Consult for our clients in Full Arch, right? So
Mhm.
you're talking about there's three things you can do. You can increase the income. On our side, it's you can increase the revenue, the number of arches, the
Right.
number of revenue, the amount of revenue you're increasing. And that's our teach, coach, and train side, every touch point of the patient journey, right? More conversions from leads to consults, consults to starts. You can reduce your spending, which is our operations side. You can look at what that cost structure side, and it's whether you talked about it as discretionary or essential. We talk about it as fixed or variable income, right? Or third, which we see a lot, you talked about delay retirement. We talk about, well, they sit on their hands and do nothing and realize, oh my gosh, or they like dabble with something else. And then 6 months later, 8 months later, they come calling us again and saying, oh, yeah, we really do need your help. The experts in the industry, let's do something. So
Right.
there's so many parallels, not only in what you're talking about, but what we talk about and what we see often, not just in Full Arch, but in any of these ancillary services, auxiliary services in dental, be it sleep or clear aligners, and especially in Full Arch in the lane that we work in and have been in for a long time, helping
Mhm.
clinics to be able to accelerate their earnings and profitability in a significant way with visibility, right? With clarity. And I
Right.
think that's what's so important. And so, what are those, with those three pieces, what are you seeing with clients that you're working with as like the most important piece as far as like to get from where they are now, which is, the do nothing into the first steps and really starting to have, once they have that awareness of getting steps in the direction they're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, you filled in kind of the blank for me, at least the first part of it, which is the very first step is just kind of understanding where you're at. And for me in my business as a fee-only financial planner, that's kind of getting an understanding of what their goals are, what their priorities are, what their income, assets, liabilities, et cetera, look like, and then creating an analysis that gives them an idea of how likely is it are you going to be able to accomplish what you are setting out to accomplish. And then from there, if the results are negative or not as good as we'd like them to be, then we talk about what options they can take. And there's a lot of different things they can do. And I see the parallels. There's a lot of similar principles in your business as there is in mine. There's things like you can do a social security strategy where, you delay until 70, or maybe a spouse claims a spousal benefit. You can use a dynamic spending strategy to adjust your discretionary spending as the market moves. Um, but again, going back to those three principles, the most impactful things I typically point out to my clients that may not have as high of a success rate as they like is it's really going to be a conversation about are you more likely to delay retirement, to get a part-time job, or to significantly sometimes cut your spending, your discretionary spending. And everybody's different. Some people are I am going to retire at 62, and that's a non-negotiable. And other people, it's like, you know what, I was already over inflating my expenses, so I could definitely cut $2,000 a month. And it's about having those conversations. And I think the starting point is figuring out what their number is, what their retirement number is. And typically, a very simplistic way to do that for your audience is take whatever your retirement income is, or retirement spending is. Let's say it's $5,000 per month. That is $60,000 per year. And then you use what's the standard rule of thumb, which is called the 4% rule, which says that you can spend 4% of whatever you've saved up or invested over a 30-year period. And regardless of what the market does, you should be okay and have money left over when you pass away after 30 years. So for that example, $5,000 per month you would need about 1.5 million to be able to sustain that. And that's very much a starting point, but it's a good target to set if you're kind of just getting started with retirement planning.
Hey there, it's Greg Essenmacher, host of the Two Sleuth podcast and founder of G&A Consult. At G&A, we specialize in transforming full arch dental practices, teaching, coaching, and training teams to deliver an exceptional patient experience, from that first call to delivering final smiles. Whether you're a practice owner, a DSO executive, or a regional leader looking to expand your full arch program, boost same-store sales, or unlock the true profitability of full arch cases, we've got you covered. Ready to see how full arch can elevate your practice? Visit the show page or book a discovery call today. Let's turn your potential into results. And you've just scared about 70% of my listening audience that's thinking 1.5 million for 60. We are not editing that part out. Well, I mean, and if you think about it, right? Because I would think that maybe 20 years ago, right? 30 years ago, when I was in my 20s and maybe even into my 30s, like the thought of having $1 million to retire on, and maybe it was just a limited scope. I grew up in blue collar Detroit. Maybe this was, just my thinking, because I didn't come from an entrepreneurial background. And some of my listening audience has, and they'll just laugh and probably comment in socials, bring it. I'm okay. I can handle it. I've been a Lions fan since birth, one of these years. But it's true that, this thought of having $1 million to retire on was this the aspirational number. And now what I'm hearing you say is 1.5 million, rule of 4, over 30 years, to be kind of conservative on the safe side, gives you $5,000 a month. And I don't know about you, but $5,000 a month does not sound like a lot of money with the lifestyle, inflation that's happened in my life. Now, granted, I don't know that I need to drive an Audi when I'm, 65, 70 years old, probably want to. But that's a choice, right? Not everybody does or needs to. But also, there's another piece that I want to comment on, because I know I made this comment to you years ago. Soon after you and I first met, I met you because you've been friends with my son for a number of years. And it was the comment that I said, yeah, but I'm probably not going to have the mortgage that I have today. And I loved the comment that you made. You said, yeah, but also your medical bills aren't going to be as low as they are today either. And this was a number of years ago, right? And I thought, oh, that's good. You've been doing this a while. You've answered that question before and smacked it down. So really, it's an opportunity to open the mind of so what is your number? And if you haven't thought about what is your number, it's super important to say, what is your number? I mean, certainly, you want to at least have some forethought of what does that look like for you, and then reverse engineer it back. And it's certainly with my mastermind group, it's an exercise that was encouraged for everybody to do, whether you're going to sell your business, whether you're going to, doesn't matter what exercise you're going through, is start with the end in mind and work your way back, which I think is critically important. Is that an exercise that you do right off the bat with all of your clients in order to get to, okay, what do we need to do today? And I'm going to ask you that, and then I'm going to ask a part B of the question. I'll let you answer both. And then what tools do you find most effective for those that really don't have a good understanding or visibility to what that monthly spend looks like currently in their current situation? Yeah.
Yeah, lots of good questions. And I'll first comment on that, the idea of $1 million being this just lofty goal. And I think it's similar to that 6-figure myth as well. I don't know if you agree, but $100,000 used to be the status symbol of, oh, I've made it. I'm super rich now. I'm making a lot of money.
And it's almost like poverty level at for a family of 4 or 5. It's crazy. Depends on where you live. It's insane. Yeah.
Here in Hawaii, you cannot, a family of 4 could not. They would struggle on $100,000. Even a family of 2 or 3 potentially, right? So that's one thing. So I think it's just $1 million isn't what it used to be. And I would also say too that the 4% rule of thumb, that is a starting point, right? If you want to have a general idea of this is what I should kind of be shooting for on my own, this is kind of a calculation that I'll do. I would take that number and either kind of back into how much I need to save and invest every year to get to where I need to be. And that will give you an idea. But then that's when you should talk to somebody like me, like a financial planner that will actually be able to run the details of, okay, how much are you going to get for Social Security? Do you have rental income? Do you have any other sources of income? Are we considering long-term care, to your point, or healthcare needs? And that really builds out a more accurate version of of how much you need to save and invest and whether you can afford to retire, how much you can afford to spend, etc. Um, so yeah, I may have missed one of your questions. I think I forgot.
No, no, it's okay. And then there's all kinds of different aspects to the portfolio too. It's like, well, so how generous do you want to be to the next generation or your kids, or what does that lifestyle look
Exactly.
like? Yeah, and I was just gonna say, like, what are some of the tools that you have for those that don't have awareness of, well, I just kind of pay my bills and this is what it is, and I have a variable income because I'm a salesperson and some months are good and I get paid quarterly bonuses and the year end bonus is big, and that's a big chunk of what my income is because my salary is low. So, like, what tools do you generally use to help gain awareness for some of your clients when they come on board?
Yeah, the main tool that I use that most financial planners will use is called the Monte Carlo simulation. So basically, that it's a tool that takes into account all of your income sources, including Social Security, portfolio withdrawals, required minimum distributions when you're in your 70s, and also considers factors like, okay, when you're 90 years old, maybe we have 3 years of long-term care expenses, and it filters all of that information, including how your money and portfolio is invested, and it runs a simulation of 1,000 different what if scenarios, because none of us know what the future holds in terms of the market, especially in terms of the market. So what this tool is intended for is to say, out of those 1,000 scenarios, what percentage of the time will you have money left over when you're 90 or 100 years old? And that's where we derive that confidence number from. Anything above 80% is considered to be successful. There are some tools like that available for free online if you just kind of look for a retirement planning tool. But if you really kind of want to get an accurate answer, a financial planner is probably who you're going to want to talk to, and it's a lot more affordable than you think it is. I think most people assume you're going to either get charged a huge commission or you have to give over your assets and get charged a percentage fee. But there are financial planners that offer just planning only advice if that's what you need, including myself. So the help is out there if you're looking for it.
Yeah, and it's we talk about this all the time when you're in coaching and consulting and clinicians. It's good to be a clinician and to be an expert in what you do with clinical care, and then bringing in specialized help is really important to be able to lean on that at least for some visibility, awareness. And I know for me personally, I like to know that yes, I'm on the right path. I have this base level of knowledge. It's like going to boot camp and then saying, okay, well, researched this and I got enough information. Now let's throw them up in a fighter pilot that's worth $2 billion. Probably not the best move. And it's like saying that scripts work. Well, if you do go and you get some base foundation of like sales training for full arch, like the basics, yes, absolutely. But if you really want to take your practice to the next level because you're doing 4 or 5 arches a month and it's not real consistent and you want to break through that glass ceiling to really compete, you need customized, specialized care for a period of time to really level up the skills of your talent and your team. And that's what I'm hearing is really want to hone in on what is it specifically that your case scenario, because maybe you do have a unique family situation, or just what is your family situation? What is important to you? Is it more as obviously spending and the lifestyle, or is it more about retiring subjects? What do you want to do when you retire? Do you have a product you want to develop? Do you want to do consulting later on in your life? Do you want all of those things that mix in? Because I can tell you there is a lot of people that are in my lane, right? That start businesses or entrepreneurs that came from different lanes or whatever. Like the thought of retiring and putting my feet up in the sand on a beach somewhere for longer than a week would drive me batshit crazy. That is not something that sounds like a good thing. Well, not me. It'd actually drive my husband crazy. And so, like, I wouldn't want to do that because then I would be driven crazy. So, but there are other people who think this would be magical, right? So maybe like office manager, regional managers of DSOs who think, I put in my time. I'm good. Like when I retire, don't call me. I don't even want to know what an email is. Like, leave me the hell alone. And so for them, maybe it's a different lifestyle choice and maybe it's a lifestyle deflation a little bit. Doesn't mean they have to, live in poverty, right? And a double
Mhm.
wide. So, I mean, that's where I would think that your services really is an investment, at least initially to say, hey, let's take a look at the landscape. What makes sense for me to have that conversation? Is that what you find?
I love that. Yeah, I love what you said there. I think our businesses, like the nature of it is really similar in a way because we're both in a kind of a coaching and consulting kind of role, like an advisory type of role. And I often tell my clients a metaphor that I'm like a tennis coach. I'm a big tennis player. So when Roger Federer hires a tennis coach, he's not going to go to that tennis coach and say, I'm only going to hire you if you can guarantee that I'm going to perform better and win more matches. Of course, a tennis coach cannot guarantee that, but there's still value in the best tennis player in the world hiring a coach for that additional insight to be able to increase that performance just a little bit more and to be able to see things that you might not be seeing, to identify your blind spots. It's the same thing, I'm sure, for your dentist clients who have their own practice. They're good at what they do, but maybe the sales and marketing and in growing a business, that's not something they probably learned in dentistry school, right? And it's the same thing with retirement planning. No one really plans, no one really reads about this in their free time. And it's the same thing about like if you're worried about making a mistake, or if you have that question of can I really retire, especially right now with the market down, how much can I really afford to spend? I use these tools, but I'm really not sure. What's the value of the peace of mind and the reassurance that comes from someone that does do this for a living and can tell you that? And I think for a lot of people, that's where it is. Saving and investing and growing is not the same as retiring. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
think
and
it's
to use
huge.
it makes 1,000% sense. And to use your metaphor of tennis, whether you're Federer or Alcaraz or you're Serena Williams or Coco
Right.
Gauff, they don't have just one coach. If you notice, they have a whole team, right? One
Right.
that's really their swing coach, and one that's their nutritionist, and one that's their body massage and strength and fitness coach. They've got a whole team that specialize in their own lane, but they all communicate and are there for the betterment of the single individual to be at their peak performance. And that's just
Exactly.
that's the way it works. And so I love that. And that was the visual that came to mind. It really just it lands and makes a lot of sense. So well,
Yeah.
Daniel, this is the part of the program. All of my guests play a little something called What the Sleuth is Going On? It's 3 rapid fire questions. First thing that comes to mind, are you ready to play?
I suppose so.
All all right. Question number 1. What's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered? And Lynn might be listening, so be careful.
I think it might be my own. Yeah. So, like, have you ever had bad breath so bad that you can smell it yourself? Like that's my wife. You're right. Lynn does tell me sometimes, "Hey, your breath is stinky," and she likes it because that's how couples are. But um, some I never smell it myself, but one time I did. I'm like, oh, so
I do smell it myself sometimes. Like I'm like sensitive to it, and there's times I'm like, oh, like I'll be like drinking coffee all day and energy drinks and water and food, and I'll get like late in the afternoon. I'm like, what is that? Oh, that's my breath. Yeah, it happens. Yeah, for sure. And then do the dental thing, and like every once in a while I'll be in a procedure. It used to happen a lot more because I've been in over a
mhm.
thousand full arch procedures in op, but now not so much. Oh, yeah, and you've got the mask on. Oh, it was
Oh yeah,
the much
it's making
worse
so much
back. Oh,
worse. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. COVID taught us all that with the masks. Like everybody got to learn like what we experienced. And yeah, brush, floss, yeah, everything you could possibly do. Yeah, for sure. Question number 2: if you could change one thing about your smile, what would it be?
Ooh, one thing about my smile, huh? That's a good one. This isn't that serious, but I sometimes wish I had dimples when I smiled. Like everyone talks
Oh,
about dimples.
oh.
I don't actually wish that. I think I'm relatively happy with my own smile, but
A fee only fiduciary who's a liar. All right. Well, that's fair. All right. You want there?
universal truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could go and probably have them put in. I mean, have you seen some of these like starlets in Hollywood that have had all the work done and you can't even tell that they're human anymore? Like, I mean, it gets really bad. So yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, like you just the way you are, Frank.
If
Yeah.
you had to, I had to answer it, so I had to come up with something.
You do. You have to answer it. Else, anybody who's listening knows that you answered the question, because if you don't answer, I don't publish the episode. So there you go. Yeah, it's blackmail. It's really what it is. Yes, I blackmail all my guests.
Well, I guess I'll have
Kind of
to
fun.
excited for question 3 then.
Question number 3. You set it up well. Question number 3. If you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, and no, you can't choose your own, which one would you choose and why?
Wow. If I could invent any dental product
If you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, which one would you choose and why?
Well, I can tell you probably the why is that I would be able to make boatloads of generational wealth, right? Well, I don't see what other reason why I would invent a dental product other than, so that would be the why. But the what, I mean, I'm sure Honest can figure out I'm not a dentist. I'm not a dental expert by any means. I probably can think of
First
2
thing
or
that came
3
to mind,
products.
follow the results.
It's obviously the toothbrush because that's one of the 3 tools I can think of in my mind. The other one is floss, and it's like, do I really want to be the inventor of floss? Probably not. I'd rather be the inventor of the toothbrush. So
Could you imagine
would
like
say-
the Michael Jordan Nike $1 every time one of them sold, like on a toothbrush? Could you just imagine? I mean, if you had like a nickel, a penny for every toothbrush that's sold, 1 penny. You're a financial guy. Could you imagine 1 penny for every toothbrush that's sold?
Yeah. And maybe I'll clarify that I would want to invent the electric toothbrush because that's
All game changer. Yeah, we've had that answer. Yeah, of the 106, 7, 8 episode. Yeah, electric toothbrushes come up before, because we did a red row for the board.
yeah, right.
It is, yeah, because it'd be hard to patent just a regular toothbrush. 'Cause I think they had them like back in ancient Egypt. We talked about that before.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, all right, good clarifier. All right, that's not the first thing that came to mind, but all right, I'll let
Not
it.
too original, but all right.
Yeah, but not reproducible. I love it. All right, well, Daniel, in the last few minutes, is there anything I haven't asked you or that you'd love to share with my listening audience that's just dying to get off your chest?
I would just say that, I think I see you and me as kind of on opposite sides of a mountain, right? Like you're helping your clients kind of climb this Mount Everest, trying to build their business and get to a point where they can either sell their business, reaching the mountain, reaching the peak, or be able to retire, or both. And for me, I feel like it's helping clients when they're about 5 years away from the peak of that mountain and then getting down the mountain. It's a fact that mountain climbing, or Mount Everest in general, is deadlier on the way down than it is on the way up because it's a completely different game. One, you're trying to reach this goal of accumulating wealth, and the other is to make sure you don't slip and fall and can make it last for a lifetime. It's a completely different type of money management. And so I think if you are kind of in that phase of life and you've been managing yourself, investing yourself, and suddenly feel like you have a bunch of questions, that's typically when it's the right time to reach out to somebody like myself and just see what we might be able to do and what kind of value we might be able to add. And from the clients that I have worked with, it's always been a big relief for them, reassurance and peace of mind and clarity. I think you can't put a price on that.
I love it. So, and I'm a big on analogies. So not only the ascent to the top of the peak, but also on the descent, which I think is so critically important as well, to not lose your footing. So my guest on the Two Sleuth podcast has been Daniel Masuda Lehrman. Daniel, how do they get in touch with you if they want to continue this conversation one-to-one with you?
I would say visit my website, hawaiiadvisor.com, and just schedule a free consultation with me. Make sure you just check out my background. And that's the best way to get in contact with me. I also have a YouTube channel as well, at Hawaii Advisor, where I publish weekly videos about different financial planning topics relevant to retirees and those who have inherited wealth. So if you're in that position, or have a big windfall and not sure what to do with it, I'm probably one of the best guys to talk to, especially if you're looking for a fee-only advisor who is always a fiduciary and will not be paid any commissions or kickbacks or any kind of other sketchy conflicts of interest.
Love it. We'll make sure all that gets into the show notes. Daniel, thank you so much for being a guest on this show. It's been a true pleasure. Appreciate it.
My pleasure as well, Greg. Thanks for the opportunity.
If you need help with converting lead calls into consultations, closing consults into more full arch cases, or creating a more strategic marketing message and branding for your practice or group, follow me for more tips or reach out to G&A Consult for a discovery call today.